You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dodge Movie Podcast. Happy May.
Isn't May the month of Mother's Day?
It is the month of Mother's Day, and we have picked 5 movies about mothers that we are going to break down this month. And we also have some honorable mentions that we like to keep it light here on the podcast. And so we tend to lean towards comedies, yet I have a penchant for the tear-jerking drama at
They're
times.
They're just too much for me.
Right. So I would like to give a couple shouts out to grab your hankies and sit down with maybe Terms of Endearment is a classic mother-daughter movie.
Lots of tears?
Lots of tears. Lots of tears. But it's a great movie about mothers.
No truth that the title was originally Tears of Endearment.
Right. Good call. Good call. Also, on the vein of, mothers and daughters can sometimes have that very loving and yet contentious relationship, is a more modern version of that is Lady Bird, which was a great film. So those are my 2 suggestions on the more serious side of things.
Also, the Lady Bird had a rolling out of a car, which you don't see as much anymore because it's kind of dangerous.
It's very dangerous. So speaking about living on the edge, today's movie
is Postcards from the Edge.
Yes. And this was my suggestion because I love Carrie Fisher. So I'm going to call it out right now. I'm completely biased of this movie being a Carrie Fisher movie.
Who doesn't love Carrie Fisher, right?
Oh, Princess Leia.
I find it interesting that I, of course, like many of my generation, got to know her as Princess Leia, but she was such a great writer and so funny. And you don't really see that come through in that role of Princess Leia. You got the cinnamon bun hair and the dress and a little bit of snark with Han Solo. But for the most part, it really wasn't there. And then I came later to see that she was such a great writer.
So prolific. And actually looking at you right now with your headphones, you're kind of rocking the cinnamon bun look.
Yeah. Well, I think that was probably the Star Wars character I was most confused as on Halloween. They said, "Oh, are you Princess Leia?" To be fair, the gold bikini probably didn't help.
Yeah. I want pictures. Picture didn't happen.
Then it didn't happen.
All right, so we're going to be talking about Postcards from the Edge, which came out in 1990. Postcards from the Edge was directed by Mike Nichols, like we said, written by Carrie Fisher. It stars Meryl Streep, Shirley McClaine, Dennis Quaid. There's a couple cameos in there, Gene Hackman.
We talk about the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Yeah. What about Gene Hackman? He's been in everything.
He has been in everything. Like previously our French Connection.
French Connection.
Yeah.
No Way Out with Kevin Costner and Sean Young.
Yeah, it was kind of exciting when I saw him on screen. I was like, oh, we just saw you.
Now, literally after watching this movie, I saw Gene Hackman in like 3 separate films. Since then, it's crazy how much he's in.
He's amazing. Yeah, one of my professors wanted to do a whole class on all Gene Hackman movies, which...
When you said that, I thought, really? What? But now I'm thinking, no, but I'm sure.
You totally could.
Now, okay, this is something for people to play along at home. Go see how many credits he has on IMDb. How many acting credits?
Yeah.
Easily over 100, I think,
yeah.
Right?
Tweet us the answer. Text us.
Yeah, we maybe need a new category, the Century Club. Actors who have 100 or more acting credits on IMDb.
I like that. That's fun. The synopsis of this film is a substance-addicted actress tries to look on the bright side even as she is forced to move back in with her mother to avoid unemployment. And the tagline is, having a wonderful time, wish I were here, which is such a Carrie Fisher
That is
one.
a Carrie Fisher one.
Oh, so great. So this film opens up. We see Meryl Streep. She is an actress in a film. And she's frustrating the director, played by Gene Hackman, because she is exhibiting quite unprofessional behavior. And you had some fun trivia about this scene.
Yeah, so I want to say, first of all, that the interaction that he first has, where her character, Suzanne Vale, struggles with a line, and she turns to him and says something about, "Oh, I hate myself for not making that," or she's upset. And the director says, "I hate myself for trying to do it without a cutaway." And I thought that is great writing of capturing the director, because this is certainly an instance of ass kiss rodeo where he's trying to keep her spirits as high as possible and not blame her. Oh, I hate myself for not trying to do the cutaway. So I really enjoyed that little bit of line. But what I read in the trivia was this scene was kind of based on, or certainly influenced by, the director's experience on Working Girl with an actress who had a bit of a cocaine problem and was unable to deliver lines. And so I think the director was able to really get a lot of that emotion out of the actors that highlighted that conflict, that you have an entire cast and crew standing there. And so from a directorial standpoint, it's great because you see all of the different departments standing around, all the extras, the equipment, and all of this, and it focuses on this one person, and she is struggling to do her job, and that's impacting the rest of them. And then Gene Hackman delivers this great monologue to her about, I will kill you if you ruin this picture. And again, I think that captures exactly the emotion that a director has at that point, right? Looking around, seeing the money just shooting out of the bank account of all these people standing around watching, and this one person having struggles, which in her case was part of her disease, but it's impacting the rest of them. And that animus that Hackman brings to it, great acting.
Mm-hmm.
So the first line of the film is actually a little bit past their dialogue, but it's unintelligible because, as we learn, this is actually a movie about a movie at a certain point. She's in a scene as an actor. And so the actual first heard line of dialogue is, "This is it," which actually works pretty well with the film.
And in that opening scene, we learn everything we need to know about Suzanne's character portrayed by Meryl Streep. She is kind of a party girl because when she flubs her line, she kind of makes a joke about it and everybody around is kind of laughing. She goes into her trailer. We see the sound guys basically put the finger on the nose to let us know that, yeah, she's doing a little booger sugar, and everybody knows it because they can hear it. And she's just kind of like the spoiled party girl who is annoying everyone, including, like you said, Gene Hackman.
Right, especially the director.
Yeah, so I thought that was a great, not only for Carrie on the writing, but also Mike on the directing, showcasing everything we needed to know about this character, that she is struggling to behave.
Well, I think the fundamental conflict in the film is Suzanne Vale's struggles with her life, her addiction, her mother, etc. And great storytelling drops us right into it, right? We immediately see, maybe even a minute in, she's already struggling with her addiction. And so then we have this great confrontation where the director tells her that there will be dire consequences if she keeps up this behavior. He fires people on the spot. Oh, boy, if only to have that much power as a director. But anyway, this shows us, in those first few minutes, it's all in kind of a microcosm. We see what we're in for. What is the fundamental crux of this film?
Mm-hmm. And then the next scene, she kind of wakes up in bed with Dennis Quaid, who we don't know who he is at the time.
Well, she doesn't kind of wake up. She's a little bit more comatose.
He wakes up in bed with her.
And there's not nearly as much comatose person humor as there once was.
Yeah, Weekend at Bernie's came later.
Mm-hmm.
Cut to her in the hospital getting her stomach pumped, and Richard Dreyfuss. I saw an interview with Carrie Fisher, and they asked how did they get all these great cameos, and they were asking, was it her? And she said no. Basically, everyone wants to be in a Mike Nichols movie, so it was really easy for them to get, because if you think about it, Richard Dreyfuss was not in that film for very long.
No. And I thought I'd read that there is a tenuous connection between Richard Dreyfuss and Carrie Fisher, but he said he just wanted to act with Meryl.
Oh, that makes sense. Who wouldn't?
I guess I probably wouldn't. I don't know if I want to act on screen, but if you're an actor, I bet you do.
I just want to be on set.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to act with Meryl Streep. I just want to watch
please don't put me on
up close. Yeah. So she is launched into rehab, and there's a great scene where her mother, portrayed by Shirley McClaine, shows up late. I love it. She's like, am I late for that family thing?
Well,
it's basically like family night.
It was pretty hilarious because the counselor says to Suzanne Vale, well, who are you really angry with? And right then Doris walks in. It was pretty.
Yes, yes. The scene at Rehab is really telling also because I think, like we've talked about before, kind of the acting, I guess more like the reacting, because two men come up and they're very excited to talk to Doris.
They're very big fans.
Yes. And you see it's all on Suzanne's face that she has lived this moment over and over and over in her life where she is overshadowed. Here, it's supposed to be about her. She's in rehab. It's family night. You're supposed to come to talk about the person who has the addiction problem. And once again, she is being overshadowed by her mother's fame.
Well, and one of the two men, I frankly don't remember which, is also in rehab. That's why they're at family night.
Right.
And so this is a person in her group that she conceivably would have a bond with because they're going through shared group therapy.
Right.
And they're like, okay, out of the way, Suzanne, we got to go talk to Doris.
Yeah, and it's all on her face. She's not saying one word, but to me, the pain and everything is just on her face. So I thought that was a great scene to show us the tension kind of between this mother and daughter and the dynamic that they have.
Well, and we find out later that she was successful as an actor. And so that then kind of informs us that not only are you a person who's dealing with a famous parent, so you could feel lost in the background and pushed aside, but actors are themselves, especially if you're a leading actor, the focus of a lot of attention. So it's extra painful to be pushed to the side and not get that attention. So it's even harder, I think, for an actor to be overshadowed by a parent. Or I guess a spouse, right? By someone else, basically.
Yeah. I think that's why a lot of Hollywood marriages don't work, probably.
Well, that and the cocaine.
Another scene that kind of broke my heart, a little bit similar to that one, is it just highlights, I think, I'm sure Carrie was inspired by like a real scene, or maybe she's heard of people having this scene, but it's Meryl is walking by the wardrobe trailer and the director is talking to the wardrobe person about how Suzanne is filling out. And, you know, we're having a bedroom scene and we have to hide her body because it's gotten big. And the director says, well, I'm sure she's been eating because she stopped doing drugs. And then he says, do you think we can get her to start smoking? It's such a sad. And so and we're hearing it, but we're seeing Suzanne kind of.
They shoot it great because they're shooting it from an angle. So Meryl Streep is standing next to a rack of clothing, and which shows, of course, to the viewer, you know, puts in the forefront of their mind that we're talking about wardrobe here, as well as it's a place for her to hide later. But then because they're shooting at an angle up in the wardrobe trailer, you can see the director talking to the costume designer. And so they're all in the same shot. And so you would know as a person, and I've had this where people have been talking about me and they didn't know that I could hear them. You could see kind of that awkwardness on her face. And you would say, why wouldn't you just leave? Right? But I think for all humans, it's hard, but certainly for an actor, this is your job, your profession, and they're talking about you. And she's been sensitized because people keep telling her performance isn't up to snuff. So the poor dear is having a horrible crisis of confidence, and this just isn't helping.
But leave it to Carrie Fisher, and it's still a comedy. So while she's listening to all this, she's eating Fritos, like slower than she was, but she's still eating the Fritos, which I thought was so funny.
So I want to know how much of the budget came from Fritos, because there's a lot of great product placement in that film. Fritos and Coca-Cola.
Yes. But it just, once again, so sad that she had to, we feel for Suzanne. It's like, no wonder she's a drug addict. If she has to deal with all this stress, you would be too. Was there anything you noticed from the cinematography?
There were a couple things that I really liked about the cinematography. I actually have quite a few notes, and won't go into a lot of them. One recurring thing that they did, we've talked in the past about hair light, and so they really went nuts on the hair light in this film. And in particular, I remembered about the hair light when Suzanne is dubbing her lines, looping in industry parlance, later in the film. Boy, there's nothing but hair light there. And there's also interesting lighting because there's a scene where she's leaving, I think, the Dennis Quaid character's villa, and it's very, very dark, not exposed, right, with a blue tinge. Very interesting. But perhaps my favorite piece of cinematography, there's an argument that the two characters have, the mother and the daughter, on a stairway in the mother's house. Mm-hmm. And so Meryl Streep is sitting on the stairway, and you can see how either Meryl in brilliant body control or the director, the cinematographer, somebody, there's a shadow of the banister and it cuts across, and so it shadows the lower portion of her face, so only her eyes are lit. And it was such a brilliant use of the practical shadow to get that really dynamic lighting. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, now that you say that, I remember that. So this film being from the 90s, what did you think of the costuming?
Love those shoulder pads. So the Rehab director is introduced in a scene where Suzanne wakes up in a hospital after having her stomach pumped, and the director has in this beautiful purple jacket with some awesome shoulder pads. And speaking of that, at one point, Meryl Streep is outfitted in pleated stonewashed jeans. Oh,
you love a mom jean.
Oh, I do. But you will also notice that they often put Doris in white and Suzanne in black, setting up again, right, visually this contrast. But then we see during the surprise party, Doris is wearing all red. Well, almost all red, because we do get to see she has a black slip-on and red underpants. So got a little Shirley McClaine upskirt there. That I didn't remember that from the advertising campaign when the movie came out. But there's a scene there which is just gorgeous, soft, I'd almost say gelled shot, a close-up of Shirley MacLaine watching, and she looks so much like Debbie Reynolds in that shot. Yeah. With the red dress and the way her hair is done, it's chilling, right? Yeah. It's so effective.
That's such a great scene, and I was going to talk about it in a bit, but I'll talk about it now when I was going to talk about music in this film. And Carly Simon did the music for this film. And so it's a surprise party for Suzanne to welcome her home from therapy, because that's what you want after you've just gotten out of, rehab. That's what you want after you've just gotten out of rehab, is a giant party.
Surprise.
You probably just want a bath and the bed.
Yeah, probably.
But instead, her mom forces this party on her. And I thought it was very appropriate. Suzanne sings "You Don't Know Me." Very prolfic. Very
appropriate.
And Doris sings I'm still here.
Yeah, I also made note of that myself. I thought those songs were not only good songs, but wow, wasn't it beautiful what they're telling us? But also notice that while Suzanne is singing, remember, Doris says, "Do one of my songs."
Yes.
So it's her mother's song, and her mother is singing along. Quiet,
yes.
In the background as her daughter's singing. I mean, really highlighting that inability for her to share the spotlight in any way.
Right. But I also loved in that scene, from an editing standpoint, that while Doris is singing, Suzanne is sitting back and she is watching in admiration. So there's this duality of feeling that at one time you want to wring your mom's neck because she's stealing, that she can't share the spotlight. But on the other hand, you're just like, oh my gosh, but look at her. This is why she is in the spotlight, because she is so talented and she can capture a room and she is a talented singer. And I loved that look of admiration and excitement on Suzanne's face as she was watching her mom perform.
And this gets us back to another directorial technique that does not involve threatening to kill your actors. So the character Suzanne, played by Meryl Streep, is in this room with these other people at this party. And it would be a wider shot. We can see multiple people. But what you'll notice is Meryl Streep is the only person lit.
Yeah.
And so they obviously put some sort of
a key light
right above her, right out of frame. And she's the only one that's lit. And why do we do that? Well, that's because the human eye is drawn to the thing that is brightest in the scene. So that's how the director is calling attention to her performance. And so you could imagine if he had lit the entire room equally,
right?
Instead, that's going to convey something different, that's showing her as one of many, and the audience maybe wouldn't notice that. And another thing is with your actors, in that case, they were, I think, all extras. I don't think we had any other
I don't believe,
characters that deliver line that were in that shot.
Oh, her friend from Rehab was in. Yeah.
Yes. And they weren't acting, right? And so that's another key, that they need to specifically not call attention to themselves. When you're an extra, you're supposed to be helping to direct the viewer's eye to the person that the scene is about.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a certain director who got his start as an extra who's famous for misbehaving in the background of the scene. He tells the story himself. And so we call that pulling a Favreau or Favreauing, when you see an extra who's in the back and they catch your eye. They're not supposed to catch your eye, right? So if you see them mugging to the camera or having an exaggerated reaction, that's somebody taking a little extra to be an extra, right?
Yeah,
They want some attention that they weren't normally going to get. So you see, I mentioned that because the director did that on purpose, right? Very specifically, there was a bunch of people who were doing things in that scene to show you Suzanne having that reaction of her mother singing.
Yes. Yes, in this house, that's usually cause for a pause count, or because we will pause and we will say, watch the Favreau in the background.
Yeah, which is really funny because John's done a lot of stuff in his career, and that's what he's going to be known for.
No, he's beloved in this household. In fact, I think we have a month of Favreau movies coming up.
So. At least I think.
Yeah. So we love him for the good and the bad. Being shot in L.A., a lot of the homes were, quite palatial and nice. But what did you think of the sets in this movie?
So I thought the sets were realistically done. In part, one of the exteriors was from, I believe it was Connie Francis's house, who was at one point married to Eddie Fisher. So there was a connection there. The crappy little trailers that they had for the actors, exactly perfectly on target. And there's a line in there that I know Carrie had to have written, but is delivered perfectly by Rob Reiner when the three of them are trying to stand in there. And he says, if we had any more people, we'd need some lubricant. Yeah. Because they are crappy and tiny. So that was well done. I thought it was interesting. The entertainment attorney's office looked to me probably pretty accurate. I don't have a lot of experience with 1970s
I think I saw
attorneys.
Burt Reynolds' framed photo up on the wall.
Yeah, and there may have also been one of Carrie Fisher, I think, if you look closely. But he had an Oscar Mayer Wienermobile car on his desk, and I thought, that's an odd thing for an attorney to have. Well, later in the credits, we see that his name is Marty Wiener, so that was supposed to be like his own little joke. Unfortunately, it didn't land for me because I didn't know at the time that he was Marty Wiener. But I thought that was interesting. But I guess you'd call this sets or props technically. There's a scene where she's having a dream sequence and there's pills and they're glowing.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, you can put a light underneath a jar, big deal.
Right.
But she grabs a handful of these green pills and holds them in her hand and they're still glowing.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, it was 1990. They had glow-in-the-dark stuff.
Well, it was impressively done. So tip of the cap to the prop guy. Yeah. Good job.
So there's this beautiful scene that Carrie writes that I think just captured the complexities of that mother-daughter relationship. And it's near the back half of the film, at least, I think even 2/3 of the way through, where Suzanne rolls up on, she's coming home and she rolls up on her mother's car, has hit a tree, has had an unfortunate interaction with a tree.
Right. The tree won.
And she asked the paramedic or the police officer where's my mother? And they took her to the hospital. So she runs to the hospital and she comes in and I started to say Debbie. Doris is sitting in the bed and she doesn't have her wig on and her, face has no makeup and she's a mess. And she's like, Mother, what have you done? And she's like, the paparazzi are out there and they want me to leave, but I don't want them to see me. And so it's very sweet as she's talking to her about kind of forgiving her and we all make mistakes and they're having a conversation. Meryl is slowly putting on makeup and applying makeup to her mom's face and putting earrings on. And then she takes her pink scarf and she wraps it around her head like a beautiful turban. And before our eyes, Doris becomes Hollywood glamour again. And then she puts on her fur coat and she walks out the hallway. And it just was such a beautiful scene to me that at the same time that she's frustrated at her mother for what she could probably argue is the cause of her own addiction, because Doris, kind of had this, I'm no alcoholic. What'd she say? I only drink vodka or something. She had a line about.
There's a great line. She says, I'm not an alcoholic. I just drink like an Irish person.
Right.
Which, by the way, ouch.
Yeah. We just spent the month.
Just came out of St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah. And so she's frustrated at her mother for imparting this addictive, behavior onto her. And this probably isn't the first time her mom has crashed a car or that she's had to deal with her mother's alcoholism. Yet she's almost rising to the role of a parent to clean her up and make it all nice and then send her off on her way. And you notice something about then the scene right after and the framing.
Yeah, so she gets her mother kind of put back together to a certain extent so she can leave the hospital. And as they're leaving, Suzanne runs into the doctor who had pumped her stomach when she had the overdose earlier in the film, which maybe is accurate for LA, that a hospital sees a never-ending stream of overdosed actors. Mm-hmm. But so she stops to have a chat with him, and the doctor says something about like her recovery, the mother. And so Suzanne then comments like she's in her element. Mm-hmm. And so you can see that Dreyfuss and Streep are on the left side of the screen, but then the shot down the hallway, you can see on the right side in the background in delicious bokeh is the character played by Shirley McClaine holding court on the press. And so it's such great acting because not only does Shirley not have lines that you can hear, but she's out of focus and small. And you can see from her body that she is masterfully manipulating this impromptu press conference.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we've got Meryl Streep as Suzanne in focus in the foreground of that shot. Really good directing.
Yeah, that was a great scene. How about a driving review? Except for the aforementioned crash with the tree. What did you think of the driving in this film?
So Dennis Quaid's character drives a Jeep, which is maybe fair enough. He's established to have a horse ranch in Malibu somehow. But so the positive sign is that he does wear shoulder belts while operating the vehicle. This is an open-topped vehicle with no doors, so seat belts, very important. However, he does leave the emergency room drive-up area really quickly for a hospital scene.
Did he look both ways?
I don't think he looked any ways. But more importantly, we need to remind kids, do not drive while taking a handful of prescription pills. At one point, Suzanne swallows a handful and gets in her vehicle. Really shouldn't do that.
I love that scene because I felt like you could hear her chomping on them like they were Mentos.
And I just want to make a special note that no gardeners were harmed in the making of this film, despite some of the driving. But one came pretty damn close.
Yes, he did. I think I even heard
Yeah, a Wilhelm scream. Woohoo! Yeah.
How about a smoochie count?
Smoochy, smoochy, smoochy.
Did we ever get to see Meryl and Dennis kiss?
We do 49 minutes into the film. There's a smoochy, smoochy, smoochy.
With those two?
Not sure, but I think it is with them.
Yeah, I think so because that's what I wrote down.
Yeah, I didn't write it down, but yeah.
Okay. All right. Any head trauma besides the gardener who leapt from his death?
Not exactly trauma, but there is a moment where he's driving the comatose Suzanne to the hospital and her head flips over and he has to do the part where you set it back up again, which is close to head trauma.
Yeah, a little bit. Neck trauma probably at the very least.
Exactly. Chiropractors in the audience cringe.
Right. All right, let's go to the numbers. This movie had a budget of $22 million and it made $39 million, which I don't know if that would have been considered a win even in 1990.
He almost doubled up. I mean, that's quite a few million. Tell you what, I'll take that $17 million profit.
Right. It has a 6.7 on IMDb, but I've started looking at Rotten Tomatoes because I feel like it's a little bit more, I don't know, calibrated more correctly. And Rotten Tomatoes gives it an 84%, which I think is it's a good solid B movie.
So that's
not a B movie, but
question about whether Rotten Tomatoes, where they distinguish between the fans and the critics, but IMDb would probably, you would think, be mostly fans.
Right, but they always run low, I think.
Yeah, at least on the movies
Lower than
I
what
like.
we think.
But then they go high on crappy movies, so maybe it's just not calibrated well to our taste.
It's a Siskel and Ebert calibration.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, it's an hour and 41 minutes. It's rated R. It's labeled as a comedy/drama. Meryl was nominated for an Academy Award in the Best Actress category, and they were both nominated for a Golden Globe, which I would find appropriate.
Yeah, I thought the acting was very good.
So, on this first week of May, we hope you enjoy Postcards from the Edge, a Mike Nichols movie released in 1990. Come back next week. We're going to be talking about one of our favorite movies, Mother by Albert Brooks, not to be confused with the movie Mother with Jennifer Lawrence.
Different films.
Yes, very different.
Not a remake even.
So, we hope you guys have a good week. Remember to leave us those reviews. Go to all of our socials and tell us what you think about these movies. Suggest movies.
Throw us a 5-star rating if you feel good about that.
Please, and hit subscribe. Have a good week, everybody.
Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to dodgemediaproductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.